Cold Bennett thought the war had ended when he came home, but fate wasn't finished with him. On a gray autumn morning in the forests of Cedar Pass, the silence shattered when Echo, his old German shepherd, began barking with urgency. Cole followed, boots crunching damp needles, until the smell of smoke led him to a cabin hidden by overgrowth, flames clawing through its roof. Inside, bound to a chair, was a young deputy, beaten and left to burn alive. Cole didn't hesitate. With Echo at his side, he dragged the stranger out just as the building collapsed behind them in a storm of fire and ash. The deputy's name was Nate Holloway. He spoke through coughs of a smuggling ring, a trap laid with precision. Whatever answers had been inside that cabin were gone, swallowed by the flames. Cole brought him back to his own small refuge in the mountains, a place he had chosen to keep the world at arm's length. There, he patched Nate up by the fire while Echo kept watch. But Cole knew this wasn't chance. Someone wanted the young man silenced, and now their trail crossed his. When dawn broke, they returned to the ruins. Smoke still drifted like a ghost from the blackened beams. Nate, bruised but resolute, scanned the clearing with tired eyes while Cole crouched low, reading the ground like an old map. Echo circled the ashes with sharp intent until his paw struck dirt softer than the rest. Digging revealed a glint of metal, half a broken locket, initials faint but clear. M.A. Nate's breath caught. He recognized it immediately. Maria Alvarez, 14, missing for weeks. Cole turned the locket in his palm, the weight of it pressing harder than any scar. This wasn't just about smuggling. This was bigger, darker. Someone had left a child's memory buried in the ashes of that trap. And with Echo pacing at his side, Cole understood. Walking away was no longer an option. It wasn't just a hideout. Nate studied the ruins with grim certainty. This cabin had been a transfer point, a place to stash the missing before moving them along. Echo's nose led the way again, the dog pawing at a cracked stretch of foundation where moss and ash had settled. Beneath the rubble, Cole uncovered a plastic-wrapped scrap of paper, soggy but still legible. A torn map marked with a thin red line through the backroads of Montana. At the far edge, a red X stood out. The words beneath it were faded, but enough remained. A warehouse near Flat Ridge. Nate traced the line with a steady finger, his jaw tightening. That's where they regroup. And you were never supposed to find it. His voice carried anger and betrayal. The weight of realizing someone from inside his own department had lured him into that fire. Cole didn't speak, only turned the map over and slid it into his pouch. Later, with his weather journal open on his knee, he wrote it all down. Echo's find, the locket, the map, the lead. Writing was more than record. It was his way of binding himself to a promise. Echo hadn't stopped scanning the treeline. At Cole's call, the shepherd padded to a mud path behind the wreckage, barking sharply at the ground. Tire tracks pressed deep into the earth. Heavy dual-axle treads, the kind belonging to industrial haulers. Not one or two victims. Dozens. The silence between them grew heavy. Nate finally said what they both knew. He couldn't go back. Someone had sold him out, and stepping into the station now would be walking into a bullet. Cole only looked at Echo, then back at Nate. Then we don't go back. We follow the map. By afternoon, they were back at Cole's cabin. Echo lay dreaming on the rug while Cole drew a clean copy of the map by hand. Nate watched him work, rubbing the bruise at his temple. "You've done this before," he said. Cole didn't look up. "Not like this, but I've tracked things that didn't want to be found." His pencil paused only to add another note in the journal. Flat Ridge confirmed. Surveillance next. The following day, the wind carried the scent of winter as Cole's old pickup rumbled down a forgotten service road. Nate sat in the passenger seat, face pale but hardening with resolve. In the back, Echo stood tall, ears pricked, nose tilted into the shifting currents of pine and rust. They followed the map's route to where abandoned rail tracks curved toward a sagging timber warehouse, its sides weathered gray, its roof bent under years of rain. Cole scanned the structure with narrowed eyes. "Looks dead," he murmured. Nate shook his head, catching the faint tang of diesel in the air. "Dead things don't smell like that." Echo leapt from the truck, trotting toward the loading dock, where rotted planks groaned beneath his paws. Inside, the stench hit them, sweat, gasoline, dust. Shafts of light cut through the broken siding, catching on fresh footprints. Plastic restraints tossed aside. A bucket half full of water. A thermal blanket still hanging. All the signs of people held and moved in haste. Then Nate froze, eyes locking on the far corner. From the shadow of a beam, a tiny red light pulsed. A surveillance camera. Watching. Recording. They weren't alone. Cole's instincts had sharpened over years of war, and now they guided every move. At his belt, he pulled free a makeshift body cam. An old phone gutted and rebuilt into something leaner, wireless, untraceable. He pressed it into Nate's hand. Keep it on your vest. If we get separated, at least someone will know. Nate gave a grim nod. What if they're already watching us? Cole's reply was steady. Then let them think we're foolish enough to walk right in. Before the silence could settle, Echo barked, short, sharp, urgent, and bolted toward a stack of pallets against the northern wall. His paws tore at the edges of a tarp, claws scraping until a hidden hatch revealed itself. A steel handle bolted flush into the floor. Cole heaved it open, hinges screaming in protest. A stairwell yawned downward, swallowing the light, exhaling damp air thick with mildew and the sour trace of fear. They descended carefully. A single bulb swung overhead, throwing fractured shadows across the crude cellar. It had once been a root cellar, maybe, but no longer. Behind a wall of crates, for figures huddled. Two women, one streaked with gray, the other barely out of her teens. A boy silent, clinging to her sleeve, and a girl thin as a shadow, no more than 7. Their fear eased only when Echo padded forward, tail low, posture calm. He's not one of them, the younger woman whispered. Nate knelt, voice soft but certain. You're safe now. The little girl raised her hollow eyes. They said tonight. The cold truck. More people. Cole's jaw set hard. Did they say where? The older woman shook her head. Her voice trembled, but there was iron beneath it. No, just that someone with a badge was covering their tracks. One of them mentioned Marvin. Marvin handled the paperwork. Nate stiffened. Marvin Keller. County records. Keeps to himself. Quiet. Perfect for burying files no one's meant to see. The woman gave her name. Luciana Ramos. A seamstress tricked north with promises of work. Sophie, the younger, had fled an abusive home. The boy, Mateo, barely 6, mute with trauma. The girl, Anna, taken from a refugee shelter. Forgotten, overlooked, but alive. Cole guided them out, while Nate swept his light across the cellar. More bedding rolls, syringes, an empty cage shoved into the corner. This wasn't small time. It was systematic, industrial. Above ground, the warehouse groaned with echoes, but it felt alive now, breathing with secrets. Cole pressed the map into Nate's hand. I'll get them safe. You stay. Watch for the truck. Nate tugged his hood low, checked the tiny camera's red blink. They're coming tonight. By the time Cole loaded the survivors into his pickup, the night had thickened. Luciana cradled Mateo as he finally slept. Anna sat wide-eyed, staring at Echo with a kind of reverence. Sophie broke her silence at last. Why are you helping us? Cole didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. Because once, someone helped me. And so, under a thin veil of stars, Nate and Echo waited in the shadows of the warehouse. The forest held its breath. Nate crouched low, vest tight against his chest, whispering to the dog at his side. All right, boy. Let's see what they've been hiding. Echo's limp from earlier hadn't slowed him. His ears cut through the silence like antennas. Then came a growl, low, deep, certain. Nate followed him to a fallen log, where the dog scratched up a strip of gray fabric, prison issue, crusted with blood. Embedded in the seam was a fragment of a tracking tag, the kind used in detention centers. Nate turned it in the moonlight just as a twig cracked. He spun too late. A figure lunged from the dark, slamming him to the earth, breath ripped from his lungs. Another shadow broke from the trees, but Echo was faster. He hit the man mid-charge, jaws locking around his arm, dragging him down in a blur of teeth and fury. Nate fought his attacker, wiry and scarred, every strike wild but efficient. With a surge, Nate reversed the hold, driving his face into the dirt and wrenching his arm back until bone creaked. Across the clearing, Echo refused to let go of the brute who tried to break him. Only Nate's sharp command pulled him off, chest heaving, eyes locked on the man still writhing. Blood streaked his shoulder where a boot had caught him, but Echo stood steady, ready for more. Both men were bound within moments, zip ties cutting into their wrists. Nate pressed his boot down on the scarred man's arm, voice low and dangerous. "Where?" The man spat dirt, sneering. "Doesn't matter. Too late. The shipment's already moving." Nate leaned harder. "Where?" A hiss of pain, then words spat like venom. "Green Hollow, refrigerated truck depot, south end of town. Sunrise." Nate froze. Green Hollow, a place long whispered about, always dismissed by Sheriff Boyd himself. Boyd, with his steady gravel voice and calm eyes that never quite blinked when hard questions were asked. Nate felt the weight of it then, the betrayal in his own house. And for the first time since the fire, his anger burned hotter than his fear. There had been whispers for months. A missing ledger, an investigation dropped before it could bloom, questions smothered before they found their answer. Now it all fit. Nate stared down at the bound man, his voice low, hard. "You've got a badge backing you?" The man only laughed, bitter and cracked. "You'll find out when it's too late." Nate left them lashed to a tree and keyed his radio. Cole answered from the road, the soft rumble of the truck behind him carrying the rescued survivors. Nate reported the lead, Green Hollow before dawn. Cole's voice came back steady. "You good?" Nate's eyes dropped to Echo, panting but upright, fur matted where a boot had struck him. "Mostly." "He's standing. We've got enough to move." He tore open an energy bar, broke it in half and offered a piece. Echo took it with gentle jaws, eyes burning with that tireless focus that reminded Nate of his partner. It wasn't the first time Nate had seen haunted eyes. Around a dying fire, Cole had once spoken, just once, of Syria. Of Maria, a girl who ran into the street for her brother during a raid that had gone wrong. Civilians weren't supposed to be there, but a sniper hadn't seen the difference. Cole said she wore a ribbon in her hair. He couldn't stop the bleeding. Maria was also the name whispered by Luciana at the warehouse, her niece. The resemblance, the echo of that past, must have gutted him. Nate brushed a hand along Echo's head. "Let's finish what he started." On their way back, something gleamed faintly beneath the log where Echo had dug earlier. Nate unearthed a silver locket, snapped open to reveal a blurred photo of a baby, Hispanic features soft in sleep. A date etched inside, April 3, 2017. Another thread in the web. He pocketed it for Cole. Back at the warehouse, he cinched the attackers tighter, filmed their faces, their words, the map scratched into dirt pointing straight to Green Hollow. Then he leaned against the truck, staring up at the sky, Echo pressed against his boots. "We're in deeper than we thought, boy." The shepherd thumped his tail once, a quiet vow in the fog-drenched night. By dawn, they'd regrouped. Nate parked the Jeep behind a row of pines, frost cracking beneath their boots. Echo scouted ahead, nose sweeping like a compass. Cole slid from the back seat, his knee brace whispering with each step, a photograph crumpled in his fist. 3 men in desert dust, laughing mid-motion. His voice was flat. "One of them's driving tonight. Wyatt Lee, Kandahar. If he's here, this runs deeper than I imagined." They crouched behind rusted containers as 6 refrigerated trucks idled in the freight yard, exhaust curling white into the cold. Plainclothes men moved between them, speaking in clipped tones. Floodlights washed the steel in pale cones. Echo's claws scraped the dirt, digging until she uncovered another scrap of fabric, blood-stained, embroidered with the word sanctuary. Cole's face hardened. "That's a non-profit at the border. They're supposed to help refugees. If their name's being used, this isn't local anymore." This is international. They shifted closer, keeping low. A trailer door stood ajar. From inside came the hushed murmur of voices, then a child's cry, sharp as glass. Nate's jaw locked. Cole pressed a battered recorder to his vest. Get faces. Proof. No matter what. Nate crept toward the cab, Echo ghosting beside him. Inside the trailer, rows of benches lined with zip-tied captives filled the space. Children pressed to parents, eyes blank with exhaustion. A girl clutched a torn rabbit against her chest, her mother's arm wrapped tightly around her. Cole's gaze slid to the man at the next truck. Broad shoulders, clipboard in hand, badge chain glinting under the floodlight. Wyatt Lee, a brother in arms once. A man Cole had dragged bleeding from a burning Humvee in Kandahar. Now checking names off a list. Confirmed. Cole's whisper was edged with fury. That's him. Before Nate could speak, Echo froze, nose to the ground, then darted to a drainage grate beneath the trailers. Her growl rumbled deep, paws scratching at the soil until the beam of Nate's flashlight revealed a glint of white plastic buried below. Rows of bricks gleamed pale beneath the trailer, vacuum-sealed and stacked like bricks of ice. Cocaine, packed tight beneath the captive's feet. Nate's hand shot for the radio, voice clipped. Unit 4, requesting immediate backup. But the only reply was static. He tried again. Nothing. His eyes flicked to Cole, jaw tight. It's jammed. Cole's expression didn't flinch. Or someone knew we'd be here. Footsteps pounded closer. Cole jerked Nate back just as a man rounded the container's edge. Hood pulled up, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, loading the last batch now. Dispatch says don't wait. Leave before dawn. His voice vanished into the clatter of the yard. Cole's eyes met Nate's. They needed more than shaky video, they needed a way inside. Wyatt's duffel bag sat carelessly by the wheel well. Cole slipped on gloves, unzipped it slow. Clothes, a blade, and tucked in the side pocket. A magnetic key card, nothing but a barcode across its face. He pocketed it. Bingo! Before they could move, headlights cut through the fog as another truck rolled in. 2 more men inside, rifles slung, likely relief drivers. We're out of time, Nate hissed. Then Echo stiffened. Her ears pricked, body sinking low. She stared at the far fence line where a figure lingered in the shadows. The uniform was unmistakable. Police blues, badge gleaming faintly. His arms crossed, watching, silent. Nate's chest tightened. That's Sheriff Carter. Cole's breath left him sharp.
No backup.
No call. He's the leak. The truth landed like a knife, no one was coming. It was them alone. Cole's voice was iron. We get full evidence. We tail them. One of those trucks leads to the drop. Nate nodded, the plan quick and brutal. We track, film, get those kids out. The card gets us into whatever hell they're hiding. Echo pressed against Cole's leg, her quiet nudge grounding them. Engines roared to life. The convoy rumbled into motion. 6 trucks crawling out like steel beasts into the night. Cole, Nate, and Echo melted into the treeline. Shadows swallowed by snow. Names, faces, video, and now the card, they had pieces. Not enough, but something. Snow began to fall, at first a dusting, then a storm. Within an hour Cedar Pass vanished beneath a wall of white. The world shrunk to 30 feet of vision. On the ridgeline above the freight route, Cole watched through fogged binoculars, his breath coiling into the storm. The blizzard's our cover. One shot. Nate pulled a beacon from his pack. A flare canister wrapped in shielding. We'll seed a false trail. Old utility road. Unplowed ditch. It'll bog them down. Cole took it without a word. Echo's nose twitched, ears sharp, pointing them north. She always knew. They marked the forest with infrared chalk, moving silent, every step crunching in frost. Cole's brace groaned with the climb, but he never faltered. Nate glanced back. This feel like your last deployment? Cole didn't break stride.
No.
That was hell. This is the last march. They worked quick. Nate buried a tracker in the frozen edge of the road, while Cole planted the flares, each one blinking in sequence like an official evacuation signal. From a semi's cab, it would look real. The convoy appeared sooner than expected. The first two trucks rounded the bend, engines growling. Cole signaled. The lead truck steered toward the blinking lights. The second followed. The third slowed, suspicious. Then Echo, crouched in a snowbank, gave a low bark, sharp enough to draw eyes, soft enough not to echo. A man climbed out, scanned the dark, then waved his driver forward. Within minutes, the first truck's axles sank deep into frozen sludge. Tires spun, engines snarled, curses flew. In the cab, Wyatt Lee slammed his fist against the wheel, shouting into the radio. "We're stuck. Front axles buried. Back it up now." Cole slipped forward through the whiteout, a shadow against the storm. The flashbang landed by the rear tire and burst with a muffled crack, the snow swallowing its thunder. Light flared white, shadows bent, and in that moment Nate and Echo sprinted through the haze. They tore the lock free with bolt cutters, swung the trailer door wide, and the faces inside stared back, pale, frightened, waiting. "We're here to help," Nate whispered. "Stay low. Run to the trees. Warm blankets, food, follow the lights." The huddled passengers spilled out. Mothers clutching children, men staggering weakly, the elderly wrapped in rags. Cole moved among them, guiding, his words low and sharp, every gesture urgent. Echo's growl cut through the storm, raw and primal, and she bolted toward the far truck. Cole's heart lurched. "Echo!" He chased, while Nate lit the last flares, carving a false path through the snow as cover. Nate's fingers, numb and stiff, tapped out coordinates on his burner phone. One desperate message. Human cargo. Immediate danger. Trust only you. He sent it to a single name, Agent Tara Miles, DHS. No one else. Cole followed Echo's tracks to the convoy's edge where a tarp lay heavy with snow. Beneath it, a crude wooden crate. Inside, a boy no older than 8 lay curled in a ball, breath shallow, fever soaking his thin shirt. Echo whined, pawing the crate, refusing to move until Cole dropped to his knees. He wrapped the child in his own coat, voice breaking. "You're safe now. I've got you." The boy stirred weakly, whispering one word. "Cold." Cole held him close, tears freezing on his lashes as he climbed back up the ridge. By the time they regrouped with Nate, the drivers had fled into the storm, vehicles abandoned. Wyatt Lee vanished like smoke, but 50 souls were free. Behind a snowbank, Nate built a fire pit. Flames flickered, blankets wrapped tight, ration packs torn open. Children clung to Echo as she moved among them, a living shield of fur and breath, pressing her muzzle gently against shaking hands. Cole fed the rescued boy broth spoon by spoon, his voice flat but his eyes locked on the treeline. They left him because he slowed them down. "He's alive," Nate said. "Because of her. Because of you." Cole said nothing. His hand brushed the cold key card in his vest, the one piece of proof that could open doors they hadn't yet seen. The storm still raged when black SUVs cut through the snowdrifts, headlights slicing the dark. Silver eagles glinted on the doors, Homeland Security. At their head stood Agent Monica Reyes, tall, sharp-eyed, her hair braided tight under a hood. Years of betrayal had carved steel into her voice, but in her eyes there lingered empathy, the kind that still recognized suffering. She'd lost a partner once to a traitor inside the system. She knew what it cost to trust. But Nate's message had pulled her here, a beacon in the storm. Her team spread through the compound, drones circling, boots crunching in perfect rhythm. Inside, Sheriff Clint Marshall's world unraveled. He tore a duffel from a false wall, scrambled for his escape hatch, but as he dropped onto the ladder, a low growl rooted him in place. Echo emerged first, eyes burning in the dark, snow clinging to her fur. Behind her came Cole, rifle lowered but voice steady. "Don't." Clint's hands shook as he raised them. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," Cole said. Minutes later, Clint was cuffed, silent under Echo's watchful stare. In the hours that followed, Monica's agents scoured the compound. Echo's claws scratched at an old rug, and beneath it Cole uncovered a hatch. Inside, a chamber of ledgers, passports, schedules. Evidence stacked in neat rows, enough to unravel years of corruption. By dawn, 127 souls had been rescued. Children clung to their mothers, medics worked by lantern glow, and counselors whispered comfort through the frost. Nate stood among them, a blanket on his shoulders, a faint smile on his face as a child showed him a rough sketch on his cast. A stick figure with a cape, scrawled with shaky letters, Agent Nate. And as the clouds thinned, the courtyard filled with silence as Monica stepped forward to speak, her voice carrying through the snow-laden air. I've worked this ground for nearly 20 years, her voice carrying steady through the crisp morning air. But never have I witnessed an operation ignited by such unlikely guardians. A man who thought his service had ended, a police officer who gave beyond his badge, and a retired K-9 who never forgot her purpose. She turned toward Echo, standing tall and watchful at Cole's side. For extraordinary courage, for saving lives where others could not, today you are honored. She pinned the medal gently to Echo's collar. The old shepherd didn't stir, only let her tail sweep once across the snow, as if she understood. Applause rose around them, but Cole stayed quiet, his hands deep in his pockets. Monica approached, pressing a sealed envelope into his hand. Inside was a letter on official DHS stationery, an invitation to serve as an advisor to their rural unit. No uniform, no chains, no demand. Just a chance to keep making a difference if he chose. Cole slipped it back into the envelope with a nod. I'll think about it, he said. Monica's reply was soft, you've earned more than that. Take your time. Nearby, reporters swarmed around Nate. One small woman with round glasses already scribbling notes about the quiet hero of Cedar Pass. Nate only laughed, shaking his head. Overhead the storm had broken at last. The sky opened in pale gold as the sun poured down across the compound. Cole wandered to the edge of the clearing, where Liam, the boy they had pulled from the convoy, sat huddled with other children. Cole knelt beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. You're safe now. The boy looked up, his voice faint but clear. She found me. He reached to stroke Echo's fur. Cole's lips lifted in a rare smile. Yes, she always finds what matters most. Spring came gently to Cedar Pass. Snow melted into rushing streams, and wildflowers painted the hillsides in defiant color. Where the compound once cast its shadow, a new building rose, framed in cedar and sunlight. Over the door, a carved sign read Echo House. Below it, in brass, the words, a place for second chances. Inside, laughter rang where silence once ruled. Children tumbled across bunks, pages turned in reading corners, and a circle of couches in the center overflowed with chatter after supper. Hand-drawn thank yous and bright sketches lined the walls, erasing the scars of the past. Cole sat at a low table, wrapping a bandage around a boy's scraped arm. His beard had filled in, the lines on his face softened, though the soldier's posture never quite left him. Hold still, he teased. Now you're tougher than half the grown-ups I know. The boy laughed and bolted away. Cole stretched, easing the ache from his back, his eyes drifting to the yard. There, in a sun-washed patch, Echo lay dozing near the garden. Age had grayed her muzzle, and cold mornings slowed her step. Yet her gaze still followed every child, sharp and full of warmth. Around her neck gleamed a collar embroidered with the word valor. A little girl, Maria, no more than 8, approached shyly, curls falling into her serious eyes. She had been one of the last rescued, and though silence clung to her at first, Echo had coaxed her voice back. Today she held a small pendant, tarnished silver strung on red thread. My mama gave me this, she whispered. I lost it that night, but I found it again by the garden. She tied it carefully to Echo's collar. You're our angel. Echo licked her hand and rested her head in the girl's lap, content. Inside, Nate stood before a bulletin board pinned with flyers. His badge still gleamed on his chest, but now it was worn alongside plaid shirts and a weathered jacket. This Saturday, he grinned, is our first charter day of hope. Potluck, games, and a painting contest. And no, cookies don't count as bribes, no matter how good. Laughter burst from the children. Beside him, Sarah Garland, once a shelter director, now the heart of Echo House, watched over them with quiet pride, her strength tempered with gentleness. Just beyond the porch, a wooden statue stood sentinel, carved in Echo's likeness, ears pricked toward the horizon. At its base were the words, "In loyalty, there is redemption. In silence, there is strength." As evening fell, Cole sat on the porch steps with a book in hand. The title read Ashes to Angels by Cole Hartman. He hadn't meant to write it, but page by page he poured out the memories, the grief, the hope. It wasn't a soldier's tale. It was Echo's. It was theirs. He opened to the last line. "For Echo, my compass in the dark." A soft bark pulled his eyes up. Echo stood at the steps, her body weary but her tail wagging slow and steady. Cole lifted her gently beside him. Together they watched the sky darken, stars glimmering alive one by one. From inside came the sound of children laughing, bickering over drawings, filling the night with warmth. Cole exhaled and smiled. This was home, and at the heart of it all lay a truth too often forgotten. It is not always the strongest soldier or the loudest voice who changes the world. Sometimes it is a loyal heart, a quiet presence, a guardian in fur and scars. Echo had no words, yet she spoke louder than most men ever could. She uncovered darkness, stood against cruelty, and guided broken souls back into the light. Through her, Cole rediscovered purpose. Through her, a town rose from the ashes. Through her, a prison became a sanctuary of hope. Miracles are not always thunder and fire. Sometimes they arrive on four legs, with graying fur and unshakable eyes. Sometimes they come to remind us that even in silence, God still speaks. Echo was more than a dog. She was a messenger, a protector, a miracle sent to lead a wounded world home.